Here's an atheist who has some questions for atheists.
Hello and welcome. I'm Joe from Answers in Reason. Answers in Reason is an atheist site and channel that tries to promote good conversations with both theists, atheists and other forms of non-theists online. We like to discuss philosophy and science and, a bit of theology here and there. Recently we posted 10 questions for theists, and so far I've been really enjoying the responses as they've been coming in, and I'm really looking forward to reviewing them with Dave in the future. As I've enjoyed them so much though, I figured it would be good to ask our atheist and non-theist viewers the same sort of questions as well and see what you guys think. I'd really love some video responses if you can to feature on our channel, but if you just want to leave them in the comments on YouTube, that's absolutely fine as well. Question 1. With there being a number of different types of non-theist or atheist, what label do you use for yourself? And what does that mean to you?
The label that I think fits me the best is atheist or theological non-cognitivist. Sometimes these are defined as someone who believes that the concept of God has no coherent meaning, but I have a somewhat softer stance in that if the concept of God is coherent, its coherence is simply unrecognizable to me. I leave open the possibility that maybe the idea of God is perfectly coherent and I'm just not getting it. The reason I don't find the idea of God coherent is that philosophers of religion, especially those who are apologists, will describe God as being a timeless, spaceless, disembodied mind, and that seems self-contradictory to me. What does it mean to say that something exists if it exists spacelessly? That is, it doesn't exist in any place. And timelessly, that is, it doesn't exist at or for any time. I've never heard any theist give a definition of what it means for God, or anything else for that matter, to exist. Existence seems to me to mean having location in space-time. If it's not that, what is it? The idea of a disembodied mind seems self-contradictory to me as well, because I find David Hume's bundle theory of self to be pretty convincing. He believed that your self, your mind, seemed to be nothing more than a bundle of activities. It consists of perceiving, thinking, feeling, etc. If these activities stop, it seems to me that the mind ceases to exist. And what is carrying out these activities if it isn't the brain? A disembodied mind seems to me to be the idea that there is an activity which is carried out by the brain, but with no brain. In fact, these activities occur without anything carrying them out. How does that make any sense? I know a theist might say that a soul carries them out, but what does it mean to say that a soul exists? Does a soul have a location in space-time? If not, I don't understand what it means to say that one exists, let alone carries out activities.
Now, this question isn't to spark a debate about the definition of atheism, as I think people should be allowed to identify how they like, and the underlying meaning is actually what's important. The purpose of the question is more to act as a census of non-theists and see if folks are using their labels in the same way. Question 2. Have you ever believed in a god? Which religion did you ascribe to, if any? If not, when did you first get introduced to the concept of gods?
I believed in a God as a child, but I was not in a religious environment at all, so God's existence was trivial to me. I don't remember when the idea of gods was first presented to me, but I remember that the moment the idea that they may not exist was presented to me, that immediately seemed to make more sense.
Question 3. Were you brought up in a religious area or with a religious family? How did those people around you react to you coming out as an atheist? If you grew up in a non-religious area and with a non-religious family, how were your first interactions with heavily religious people?
I wasn't raised in a religious area or a very religious family, so even though my parents believed in God, they weren't regular churchgoers or anything like that, so they didn't really seem to care that I was an atheist. The only very religious folks I ever encountered were Mormon missionaries, and they never really pressed the issue that hard. Whenever I tell them I'm not religious, they just tell me I should give it a try and hand me a pamphlet or something. More recently, the health and safety measures taken by my government in these unprecedented times have really brought out the fundies in my town to protest, but whenever I see those folks, I avoid them.
Question 4. What arguments or other evidence do you find most convincing against the existence of gods or various religions?
The apparent self-contradictory descriptions and definitions of God are what make belief in one most difficult for me. When it comes to specific theistic religions, often their central dogmas require belief that testimonies about the occurrence of miracles are more probably explained by the idea that those miracles actually occurred rather than illusion, delusion, lies, or some combination thereof. I don't see how this disparity in probabilities between human error on the high end and miracles on the low end can be overcome, even with Bayes' theorem.
Question 5. What arguments or other evidence do you find most convincing, interesting, or thought-provoking for the existence of a deity?
The strongest argument for religion, even though it's not an argument for the existence of anything supernatural per se, I think is William James's argument that people should believe what they find compelling, even if the evidence for it is far from airtight, as long as it is at their own risk. And it's this caveat that I think gives the argument its strength. Who am I to tell people not to believe in something if they understand the risks of acting on those beliefs and are conscientious about not subjecting others to those risks?
Question 6. What behaviours do you see from your fellow atheists or non-theists that you'd most like to change?
Well, something that I'd like to see less from everyone, and atheists are no exception to this, is knee-jerk anger. I find I have more interesting discussions with theists when I don't react to their sometimes clearly deliberate attempts to insult me. If someone leaves a comment on one of my videos that is full of insults, but there's also a substantive argument in among those insults, I have gotten pretty good at ignoring the insults and responding to the substantive arguments as though they had been presented politely. I engage with folks like that out of genuine curiosity about why they have the beliefs that they do, not to try to win anything.
Question 7. Religion brings people together as a community. It offers support, various rituals that bring family together to help deal with death and all that sort of thing. But what does your local atheist community do to support folks in this regard? If either you have no local atheist community or your local community doesn't do anything, what sort of things would you like to see from an atheist community in this regard?
I don't think I have much interest in an atheist community, if by that you mean a community which revolves around atheism or atheists. I'm much more interested in a secular community, by which I mean a community of people that involves both atheists and believers, but there's no attempt made between members to convert or deconvert anyone. As for what I would like them to do, essentially whatever is most pressing an issue for that community, which could vary tremendously from community to community.
Question 8. Do you think moral statements like "it is wrong to torture a small child for fun" express truth? If yes, what do you think makes it true? For example, is it the society, the people, or is it true regardless of what people believe? If no, what do you think it actually expresses? Is it emotions or intuitions, or are you giving people instructions?
Sometimes it expresses emotions, but often it also expresses how a person intends to react to or engage with a particular behavior. Since I don't believe that rightness or wrongness exist as these free-floating platonic forms independent of human minds, if I were to say theft is wrong, all I would mean by that is I oppose theft. Theft is something I would try to prevent, obstruct, and/or disincentivize. It's a statement about my relationship with the act of theft more than it's one which describes a property of theft.
Number 9. If there was one theistic religion you had to choose to be true, what would it be and why? And no cop-outs saying the spaghetti monster or anything like that.
Deism, because deist gods leave us alone. Other than that, maybe one of those new age ones that involve UFOs somehow.
Question 10. Do you enjoy any theistic content? If so, which channels would you recommend to your fellow atheists and non-theists? If not, are there any theistic channels that you've seen that do present some good arguments, even if you don't agree with their conclusions?
I have a real hard time thinking of theist YouTube channels that don't make me cringe, but the ones I find most palatable are the unintentionally funny ones, like Matt Powell's. Venom Fang X was also pretty funny long ago, but he appears to have given up.
Did you
everyone who helps me out on Patreon, you're a big help. Thanks so much.